When you think of history's great technological failures, a few names probably pop into your head, right? Chernobyl, the Titanic, the Challenger. But what if I told you that the deadliest single technological catastrophe of the entire 20th century is one you've probably never even heard of? Just take a look at this number, 171,000. And you know what? This is actually a conservative estimate of how many people died in just one event. And get this. This wasn't a war. It wasn't purely a natural disaster like an earthquake or a volcano. No, this was the direct result of a single man-made structure failing on a scale that is just, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. So how does the world's deadliest dam disaster just get hidden? Why was it kept a secret for so long? To figure that out, we have to go right back to the beginning. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Henan Province, China. It's August 1975. The stage was being set for an absolute catastrophe, but nobody knew just how bad it was about to get.
So it all starts with what seems like a powerful but manageable storm, Typhoon Nina. The problem is, it didn't just pass through. It made landfall, and then it just stalled. It parked itself right over the region and started dumping a year's worth of rain in just a few days. Now, the Banqiao Dam was supposedly a feat of engineering, built to withstand a once-in-a-thousand-year flood. But it was being totally overwhelmed. And by the time anyone realized the true danger and tried to send out warnings, it was too late. The phone lines were down. And then, at midnight on August 8th, the dam just gave way. Now, to really understand what happened next, you have to get this concept. It's called cascading failure. It's a simple idea with terrifying consequences. See, the collapse of the Banqiao Dam wasn't the end of the story. Oh no, it was just the trigger. The domino effect was just horrifyingly fast. Banqiao's collapse unleashed this inland tsunami, a wall of water almost 20 feet high, moving as fast as a car on a highway. It slammed into a whole network of 61 smaller dams downstream, and one by one, they collapsed too. The entire river system just failed. Entire communities, whole villages, they were just wiped off the map in minutes. But here's the thing. This disaster wasn't just about a freak weather event or a simple crack in the concrete. To really get why Banqiao failed, you have to look at the ideas that built it. You have to look at a system where political ambition went to war with the laws of physics. So you had these two things on a collision course. On one side, you had the political goals of the era in China, this period known as the Great Leap Forward. And the mission was build fast, prove that humanity can conquer nature, and treat any kind of caution or hesitation as being politically disloyal. And on the other side, well, you have the cold, hard realities of engineering. You need safety margins. You have to respect the data. And listening to dissent isn't weakness. It's a critical safety feature. They literally made the dam spillways smaller just so they could hold more water for farming. It was a fatal mistake. And this whole conflict really had a human face. There was a Chinese hydrologist, his name was Chen Xing, and he warned them over and over again. He said the design was flawed, that they were seriously underestimating the risk of extreme rain. And for being right, for doing his job, he was dismissed from his post and politically persecuted. His expert warnings weren't seen as vital feedback. They were treated as an act of betrayal. So when you put it all together, you realize this wasn't an accident. It was a disaster that was just waiting to happen. The spillways were too small, the data they used to calculate the flood risk was wrong, the political climate made it basically a crime to raise the alarm, and there was no plan B, no evacuation plan. It was a system that was perfectly designed to fail spectacularly. The collapse itself was just the beginning. What came next was a human tragedy on a scale that is just, it's unimaginable. And it was all compounded by decades of official silence. Okay, to really put this into perspective, let's look at some other famous dam disasters. You might have heard of the Johnstown flood in the US or the Vajont Dam disaster in Italy. Tragic events, thousands dead. But look at the death toll from Banqiao and its chain reaction. It's not even in the same league. It surpasses all of them combined by a massive, massive margin. The scale of this loss is in a category all its own. And the horror didn't stop when the floodwaters slowed down. Tens of thousands of people drowned almost instantly in that first wave. But the majority, we're talking over 100,000 people, they died in the awful days and weeks that followed. They died from waterborne diseases, from starvation because all the food was gone, from exposure. And the worst part? The Chinese state classified the disaster as a state secret. No international aid was allowed in, and for more than 20 years, the rest of the world had no idea it even happened. So you might be wondering, okay, a terrible disaster from 1975. Why does this forgotten story matter so much today? Well, it matters because the warnings it screamed are, frankly, more relevant now than they have ever been. One of the most direct legacies from Banqiao is a huge shift in how we approach engineering. You see, instead of just relying on historical data, that whole 1 in 1,000 year flood idea, engineers now often design for something called the probable maximum flood, or PMF. What that means is they model the absolute worst-case scenario that is physically possible for that area. It's a direct response to Banqiao proving that the weather of the past isn't always a good guide for the extremes of the future.
And the lessons here go way beyond just building dams. Think about it. When you silence whistleblowers and experts, it's not just a political problem. It's like adding a huge physical weight, a structural load onto a system, weakening it from the inside. We learn that being resilient isn't just about strong concrete. It's about having good warning systems, evacuation plans, and open communication. And it forces us to realize that our aging infrastructure, built for a world with a different climate, needs a serious second look.
But ultimately, if you take one thing away from this whole story, it should be this. The catastrophe wasn't really about nature versus technology. The real failure happened at that dangerous intersection between what was known and what was allowed to be said. The risk became absolutely catastrophic the moment that scientific reality was forced to bend to political ideology.
And that really leaves us with a pretty unsettling question for right now. In all of our own complex, high-stakes systems today, from how we handle climate change to public health to AI, when the hard evidence points one way and a powerful ideology points the other, which one are we choosing to follow?